So, welcome to this episode of Menopause Conversations. I am fangirling. I'm just going to put this out there now. I'm so excited to have our next guest. And for those of you that are on social media, you will know my next guest instantly. I'm delighted to have the wonderful Chloé Dall'Olio on Menopause Conversations. Hello, Chloé, rocking the red, which is absolutely brilliant.
Very
And
on brand.
I'm very on brand. I love it. I love it. I deliberately muted my colours so that it
Mm.
obviously amplified yours.
Hi, Amantha. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's brilliant. So let's tell you a little bit. If you don't know Chloé, but you recognize Chloé, let's tell you a little bit about Chloé. Well, I'm actually going to ask Chloé to tell you a little bit about herself. Chloé, tell us a little bit about you, how people might know you historically, but actually how people might know you more today in the present day of 2025. Over to you.
Whoa, thank you. That's a huge question that I have not prepared, so I will try to be brief with you. Right. So I think when I have people stopping me in the streets, not quite sure who I am, but be like, I think like I know you. Oh, your voice sounds familiar. I always ask, do you follow Trini Woodall? And they're like, Friday, Tweety. And I'm like, yep, yep, yeah, that's me. So some people might recognize my voice and be like, yeah, it's that girl. So yeah, historically, I've been working with Trini Woodall for like 10 years, helping her building the brand Trini London and supporting with all things social media, video production, marketing, and growing the community. I have been directing a lot of the entertainment videos and also being in some of them, especially this Friday Twinning series that has been very popular over 5 years. We've done over 300 episodes, and it was a lot about like joy and wearing something that makes you happy and body positivity in a way, and seeing different bodies that can wear similar things in their own way. So like sort of like self-love in a way, and learning about yourself and doing it with fun and with a style expert such as Trini, with an amazing set of makeup such as Trini London, with amazing stylists such as Molly that is also on the team. Like that was part of maybe where some people have seen me before. uh so that's part of let's say my career in the last 10 years. On the alongside these, I've also always been interested in like bodies and movements and art. I trained in acting. I studied art curation. So I'm really, really interested and passionate about beauty and art from like a wider perspective that is not just commercial, but it's more like awareness and somatics and everything that has to do with like performing, using your body to share a conversation and energy work, all of that. So I have been working through and trying all things that help me feeling embodied and feeling, I don't know, able to listen to my body. And then I tried with different medium, with art, but also with interviews as well, now podcasts, and working with other people that have been honoring their body also from a beauty perspective and art and everything that goes beyond inclusivity. And I have been working alongside this main job with Trini also on that. So yeah, some people might have kind of like got in touch when I was doing these interviews on over lockdown called the Body Talks, which is my project that was born there, and now it's becoming something bigger that I'm working on at the moment. Um, some people might have seen me performing. I'm also an improviser, like improv comedy. So maybe in London, someone might have seen me in a mess. And then this year, I'm also doing some cacao ceremonies.
Yes.
I trained in Guatemala. I was initiated in this little village in San Marcos de la Laguna in sharing the medicine, this ancient medicine of cacao, of ceremonial cacao, that helps dropping from your mind to your heart and connecting to your emotions and your feelings in your body, which is still part of the conversation. In fact, within the Body Talks work, there is the conversations, the movement, and the cacao taking, and then the communal aspect of it. So in a way, I feel they went parallel really well, because in building community for women with Trinity London, women and everyone else, women being the first target, but I am also so passionate about inclusivity and the queer community, LGBT rights, trans rights. So that has also been going on. So maybe some other people saw me at some queer raves. Like I actually am like so multifaceted, and it's really difficult to kind of like give me one label. So when people ask me, what do you do? I'm like, what do you want to know? Because I can talk forever, and
Yeah.
maybe it's a bit overwhelming sometimes. But yeah, this is more or less like an intro. What am I about?
Yes. And you know what? I knew that. And I shared with you just before we pressed record that for me, um, your twinning series was a catalyst for what I sort of describe as my own emergence from quite a dark sort of
Mm.
period of menopause transition, and I just knew, I didn't know then, but I knew quite quickly that you are someone who's very open-minded, you're very open-hearted, and you have such a good following that I thought you would be someone who would be amazing for us to talk about the topic of menopause, particularly generationally.
Hmm.
You're 36, if you don't mind me saying. I'm
Hmm.
53. So there is a generational gap between us, and yet we are going to experience this thing of menopause,
Hmm.
menstruation. If you're in a female body and you are menstruating, you will go through the menopause, whatever your identity is. And I thought we don't really have any sort of direct ins to the queer community, who is talking in the queer community about menopause. In the transgender community, where's the representation there? I think we have so much more work to do. And I thought, wouldn't it be great if we got someone on like yourself who would be open to asking those questions and would feel that vulnerability and would, on behalf of other people, so that you could ask the questions so that other people could start to understand? Because you said something so interesting to me before we press record, which is, what did you say about people who perhaps are younger? Because I said when I was in it, I was just surviving, desperately trying to get whatever I needed to get through the day. Sometimes that was watching a video of watching other people wear colour. And I would go, okay, I'll give that a go, see if that helps. And it really did help. So what do you think, when you think about your generation, what are they thinking when it comes to menstruation and menopause and connecting those dots?
Yeah, that's a great question because I think that as you said, like you either are in it and trying to find ways of like going through it, or you are not in it and you think that it won't affect you, like you have no idea and there is no conversation about it. I know about menopause in a way because of working with the Trinity London community and knowing how many women, when we talk about menopause, they're super interested in like having like guidance through it and inspiration and a solution and like someone that can give them some tools to go through it. But like I've always seen it as something so external to me that I have never even thought about it. I've never talked to my mom about it. Like it's so, and I'm 36. And as you said, like I could even be in perimenopause soon. Who knows? But I have been so alien to the whole conversation, not just knowing that a lot of people are interested, but like not me. And when you got in touch, I was like, oh, oops, like maybe I am supposed to know more because you're like, it's all about menopause. And you're like, where are you at? And I was like, I know nothing. So this could be an amazing place for me to ask you about menopause and then knowing more. And then hopefully people that, as you said, follow me and then they're interested in knowing more, they would be like, actually, maybe I can benefit from knowing something even before that happens because we always are so used to fix the problem and never like we usually never focus on the 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 prevention. Like it's
Yeah,
always a cure, never a prevention.
yeah.
And especially in this like really fast-paced world, like it's all about like fixing, 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 not just stopping, slowing down and thinking, okay, to be able to have a long, strong, energetic life ahead of me, what is it that I need to put in place? I don't think it's a conversation I've never heard, especially in the queer community. I don't think, I mean, I personally have never been involved in any conversation whatsoever. I know like I'm interested in like menstruation and menstrual blood. I also have a side project called the Bloody Talks, and this is also what I wanted to do, like bring up conversations that are inclusive, that are not just about women, but it's about everyone that menstruates, that has ovaries, reproductive system. And it's a huge also mission of mine to be able to carry on with this conversation. So when you invited me to open up the conversation from my point of view and where I am today, I was like, okay, great. Let's be honest. I know nothing about menopause, but let's actually talk about it together. So I learn. And then eventually, when someone asks me next time, I'm like, look, I know this. At the same time, I wanted to say that yesterday, because last time I talked to my mom about her menstruation, because related to my own like blood kind of like interest, she told me that she has been living with endometriosis her whole life, since she was like 32, because for her, it was normal to just like be in pain, stay one day in bed, vomit, and like not being able to function for her whole menstruation, right? And her mom never said anything. So I said, like, probably your mom also, like, how can no one like worry about you? And she's like, I missed so much work when I was at school because I couldn't go to work because I had this really pain. And only when I was 32 for something else that happened, they just in Haiti or something, somewhere else outside Europe, someone told me that it could have been endometriosis. And I'm like, A, this is shocking, and I have goosebumps.
Yeah.
Two, why have I never asked you? Like, why have we never ever talked about this? And then, and also, so yesterday I was like, okay, well, now that I know I have to talk about menopause, what year did you go to menopause? And what about menopause, perimenopause? And she goes like, I think 55, perimenopause and menopause. And I'm like, no, it's two different things. And she was like, no, I think they just happened. And I'm like, no, there are two different phases. So she's like, no, I think they just happened at the same time. And I'm like, okay, great, thanks. That's enough for me to know that actually she has never talked about this with anyone. So
Wow.
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 Already I unlocked so much here, yeah, right? So I'm so actually happy that we have this conversation because now I'm going to ask you things. I know a lot about, I know a lot about, I kind of like dedicate myself a lot about trying to listen to my body and trying to inspire other people to listen to their bodies. So I have a few tools and suggestions and inspirations and everything about that. But the actual symptoms or like messages from our bodies that identify menopause, I don't know what they are. So I'm
Yeah.
happy to talk about it with you so that maybe
Oh,
other
that's
people
so powerful. That's and so immediate, isn't it? That it's like, when we think about our relationships and culturally, women are being silent with one another. And we don't realize that this is the stuff we need to have because so much of it can be genetically passed down through bloodlines about how we
Mm.
show up. In my own family, we have history of heavy menstrual bleeding. I've got a statistic for you here, Chloe, that according to the Women's Health Concern, which is the patient arm of the British Menopause Society, 1 in 3 women describe their period, their menstrual cycle, the blood loss as heavy, and 1 in 20 women speak to their doctor every year about it. I myself used to have a symptom called flooding, where you lose 1 month of menstrual blood in hours and days.
Wow.
It's like you're hemorrhaging. And this is just because of the subtle ratio changes of our hormones. We've got 3 hormones. And I love the fact that you went back with another question because you're absolutely right. There are 3 stages: perimenopause, which is where our hormones start to fluctuate. You've got menopause, it's actually just one day in a woman's life. It's not even an anniversary, it's a one-time event. And that is
What?
165 days without a menstrual bleed. On day 366, you become postmenopausal till the day you die. I believe they say drop the mic, don't they?
So you have like peri, and then you have 1 year of menopause, and then you're postmenopausal.
No, not even 1 year. So you will have
One day.
fluctuations in your hormones and it can be up to a decade. So if you're black or Asian, you'll have fluctuations that can cause symptoms between 5 to 10 years before this one day. And your menopause technically is when you haven't had a menstrual bleed for a full 365 days. So it's a one-time event. It's not even like Christmas, which comes every year. You can only once be in menopause. So you get to day 365 and you go, no period for 365 days. Tomorrow, my menopause. Yeah, so I see a line of cakes and things potentially that
Yeah.
people could be doing. And then day 366, you are now technically a post-menopausal person. Your reproductive status has changed in that you no longer will be able to have conception. And then till the day you die, you will remain having subtle hormone fluctuations till the day you die, and will be post-menopausal.
Wow. Okay, I learned something so huge right now. And of course, like if it's just around cycles, because another thing I was wondering, I was like, how can we make conversations more accessible and like who experiences menopause? And I was like, how should I refer to people that are going through menopause without saying women? And it's like the same conversations of periods. It's the same thing. It's like the lack of period. That's it. So of
Yes,
course, not just women menstruate. Of course, not just women have this. Like everyone that is like a trans man, but also a non-binary person, intersex
exactly,
person, all of them
exactly.
might menstruate and then stop menstruate. So
Exactly, which is why we look at our menstrual cycle. There is no test. First of all, what I want to say to you, Chloe, is there is no test for menopause because our hormones fluctuate minute to minute to minute. So if I'm
mm,
feeling very calm right now, my hormones might be stable. Day one of my menstrual cycle, my hormone profile will look very different to my hormone profile on day 13 to 14, and then May 27 to 28. But one of the things that we can look at is how is my body changing? And some
mm,
things I can get you to lean into. Notice your menstrual cycle. Is it getting shorter? Is it getting longer? Heavier? Lighter? What we tend to see is when perimenopause first starts, and there are massive differences in terms of your ethnicity. Like I
mm-hmm.
said, at 36, I should have been expecting to be perimenopausal because I have Asian genes. If I was a black person, I might expect my perimenopause to start in my early 40s. Most white cisgender women will start their perimenopause 40, 45, something like that. The average age in the UK for a person to have menopause, that one day, no periods, is 51. But it can be between 45 and 55. So the average is 51. So we should be talking in cultural terms. We should be talking
Yeah,
in generational terms. We should be talking in intersex terms too.
yeah.
Anyone with ovaries, and if you're menstruating, you know, you will be affected.
Mm,
Even if people, trans men, trans women, whatever stage you're at with that, if you're taking a cocktail of steroids or hormones, there will be fluctuations for you. And you know the biggest thing that impacts all of it, Chloe? Our stress levels.
okay.
So what do you want to know
Right.
about that? When I say that to you, what do you want to know about
Oh,
that?
well, my God. I mean, I'm going through a lot of stress levels, and I think like a lot of cortisol changes and a lot of trying to work from like the fight or flight state to the rest and digest and all of that. Because I have polycystic ovary syndrome, and that's why I have some awareness of my hormones and like how they need to be balanced. But I feel like most people have no idea of the fact that stress can actually impact their hormones, that can actually impact their cycle, and can actually impact their menstruation and then their menopause. Like I think this connection between stress, then hormones, then the consequences that your body actually faces that are not just I'm stressed, like I'm not just burnt out, but it's like there is much more consequences, many more consequences to it that affects you even longer term than just than burnout. Like there is some like yeah, how can stress impact all of these, Amantha?
Yeah, so
Tell
so
us.
let me give you the answers. You're going to be the most popular person in your friendship group. And this is good because maybe we can understand then why, this whole term of work-life balance, prioritizing our well-being. When we go into workplaces, we show a slide, and I'll show it to you before we finish today. I'll gift that to you. But your sex hormones and our stress hormones actually lie on the same pathway.
Okay.
And there's a lot of emerging evidence that they also affect our neurotransmitters. And so, what we know is that our body's priority is to reproduce.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about passing on our genes. So, our body will always prioritize that unless there's a threat to us. in which case our safety is prioritized. Now, in 2025, everything is a potential threat to our brains. And so we react as if our life is in danger. And do you know that when the body, in fact, it's your spinal cord actually, when your spinal cord senses a threat, it sends a very rapid message to your sex hormones and it goes, sorry, we've just stopped the production lines.
Okay.
And it does that using a chemical, a neurotransmitter called cortisol. And that's our stress hormone. And we need a little bit of that, it actually, to be pumped up, to be ready for life, to stop you walking in front of a bus accidentally, to get you to pay attention. So a little bit of cortisol is amazing. But here's another truth bomb that I want to give you, which is if cortisol is produced in your body, do you know how long it hangs around for?
Oh my God, I don't want to know. No, tell me.
3 days.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
I always say to people, and you'll remember this, you can't be stressed and sexy. So you're either making your sex hormones or you're making stress hormones. It's one or the other. And so the payout of that, Chloe, is massive because if I had my glass of water and there's a stressful event, if I put more water in, that's another stressful event, another. We're in cortisol overwhelm most of the time, which is why as we go through our 30s, our body goes, hey, I'm not being funny. Like, I'm trying to get regular menstrual cycles for you here, but you keep putting more stress in the system. Do you know what? I'm done with trying to create a regular menstrual cycle for you. And that's what starts to happen in our 30s. We start to get what we call these anovulatory cycles where our eggs don't get released that month. And what happens is your endometrial blood builds up, builds up, builds up, and then you get the mother of all menstrual bleeds, which is why, do you know, 1 in 2 women, like I said to you, have those heavy menstrual bleeds? But we just keep
No, I
calm and
didn't
carry
know.
on. No one's talking about it.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
So
Wow.
so this is why well-being, and particularly with polycystic ovaries, what we understand, obviously you've got lots of follicles in the ovaries there. They're more maturing at like different times, but a lot of them at the same time. And that shows a lot of symptoms. I mean, for you, what would you say is the most complex or bothersome or frustrating symptom that you have with polycystic ovaries, or we call it PCOS?
Yeah, I mean, irregular cycle, stress, lack of good sleep, anxiety.
Yes.
I think they're all sort of also related to menopause symptoms, no?
Yes. And so what we know then is, and this is another little truth bomb I'll give you, we know that estrogen
Yeah.
um, has a very strong connection with a neurotransmitter called glutamate.
Hmm.
And progesterone, how it's processed, has a strong relationship with GABA, which is all about relaxation. So glutamate is all about heightened awareness, attention, anxiety.
Hmm.
GABA is like a Cinderella hormone. She's a Cinderella neurotransmitter. It's more about feeling calm, joy, helps you sleep. It's anti-anxiety.
Mm.
But actually, what happens in the perimenopause is your progesterone starts dropping first. Therefore, so do your levels of GABA, which is all your calmness. So what we're left now with is a ratio that's in favor of anxiety rather than being calm.
Mm.
So
So
what do you,
progesterone goes down and then
yeah,
estrogen stays up. So progesterone and the calmness stays down and then estrogen goes down. Yeah, no, I know that because when I was also going through like HRT-ish a couple of years ago to try and sort this out, and I was having progesterone, like I was taking progesterone cream to be able to like
yes,
balance these levels.
yes.
I stopped eventually, but yeah, that's another story. But yeah, probably I needed the Cinderella hormone
Yes.
more.
So we know that progesterone is the one to drop first, and that's all related to how many eggs are sat in your ovaries. So, when you talked on social media quite openly, you talked about being interested in that, knowing how many eggs do I have left. It's a
Yeah,
very important conversation because depending on how many eggs we've got left,
yeah.
tells us really how much progesterone we're going to have available to us. So
Oh.
so, you know, wherever we can then bring in those holistic practices of connection with people, surrounding ourselves with the people who have similar values to us, reducing the stress in our lives, upping the joy in our lives, finding that meaningful connection, it's so, so powerful. But I'm just wondering, what do we do? How do we connect younger people with what is fundamentally so important? Because, you know, what happens with your hormones today actually doesn't show up for a few weeks.
Mm.
So how many people are struggling and finding like, yeah, my cycle's different. I don't know how to get more control over it. I feel at the mercy of it. You know, how do we get this conversation to people?
So one of the things I know and I noticed, and one of the conversations I had with the people. So I was saying earlier, I did this campaign with Amelie's fertility, about my fertility, my egg count, and like thinking about like egg freezing and stuff. And they were also really keen to try and get a conversation to be the conversation to be as inclusive as possible. So I went to Pride, I talked to people, and I tried to gather some information. Something that I noticed as well is that like a lot of queer people don't feel safe in going to doctors and medical experts and talk about themselves, their symptoms, their conditions, because there is no inclusivity, there is no training that is inclusive. So most of the doctors don't care about your gender, just like they don't even ask you what do you identify as, like what's your gender identity. It's they go through very conservative ways of seeing bodies that are not really making people that are not cis and well straight people, but like anyone that is not cisgender like feel at ease in talking about these things. So even just when they go to their medical practitioner where they should feel safe, they don't feel safe. So that's one big problem that we need to sort of like solve. I think, yeah, opening the conversations the way you're doing is super, of course, is fundamental, because then if people realize that they're not the only one feeling under threat and understand that there is a way to stand up for themselves and for their rights, there is like a better set of tools that everyone feels that they have to be able to kind of like, yeah, talk to people and demand their rights to be kind of like acknowledged and um, heard. And then apart from the people, that it's always the same conversation, we shouldn't just let the people that are the minorities to fight for themselves. We also need to be advocates for them and find a way to make the system more inclusive, like also sharing the conversations with the doctors, with anyone, any practitioner that is involved, endocrinologist, anyone that is involved in this area, to be able to be more prepared to actually welcome like people that are not just cisgender or like minorities compared to the mainstream conversations that we're having. So I think what you're doing is absolutely amazing work. And I think for any doctor, any medical or holistic, anyone that is interested in supporting other people and to spread the message and to make people feel better about themselves, they should actually like ask themselves, am I trained enough to be as inclusive as possible? And then, yeah, I mean, we also know that how the society is built is not really to make people aware of how they're feeling and aware of their bodies. So there is something bigger that we are sort of like fighting in a way. So it's not that easy to just do this, but the more I think, yeah, we open the conversations and we share resources, the more we can start from our end, and then the more we can, I don't know how, but change also the structural system. Yeah. I mean, this is like the first thing that comes to my mind. It's quite like a generic kind of thing, but I think starting from what you're doing, building conversations also in the workplace, that's incredible, because that's where a lot of people are, like, so that's
Yes.
incredible to do that. And I mean, already I see a collaboration. When I was at Trinity London, like I created this queer club that it was about like inclusivity on the workplace, so that people joining the company would feel welcome also if they were like part of the LGBTQIA plus community. And I think having a workshop with you, for example, would be
Yes, please.
fantastic, because
Yes.
like that's part of the awareness and the inclusivity of anyone that is a minority in a way. But sometimes it's also a majority. But like when I started
Well,
joining a company, I was really scared to come out as like pansexual, like not straight. So like if you actually actively create situations where there is openness and like acceptance, especially like, you know, from external people, and it's free for people, because maybe some employees wouldn't pay for an extra consultation for something they have no idea it's happening. But if you give it to them for free from higher up, from where you have the money, you can decide how to actually educate people and make them feel amazing. Yeah, that's already like what you're doing is already fantastic. 10 out of 10. And
oh,
that's also why
thank
I'm
you.
like, yeah, let me actually have this conversation with you. So I support this mission.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, a question I would like to ask, because, the term queer, I feel even uncomfortable saying queer because I don't actually know what that means. So it's your turn now to educate me. And, I have done my research, but I know for so many people, they go, am I even allowed to say that? Can you
Mm,
define what queer is?
wow, that's huge in the sense that I do agree, like queer was a derogatory term in the past. So a lot of
Yes,
people of your generation, of like my generation as well, feel uncomfortable, and even like, so let alone people that are older than us that hold
of
the power
course.
and hold so it has been like, yeah, a very derogatory term, and it has been reclaimed recently to be something to celebrate. But of course I also understand that people that are not in the queer community like maybe don't even have to use the term, so they're like, okay, that's not for me, so let's just like, let's
Yeah,
not. Also there is a lot of fear of making mistakes, being like, maybe I say it wrong, so maybe I don't even say it at all. So
yeah.
there is still this barrier. I see it like the menopause barrier that we're talking about.
Yeah,
It's like that. So
exactly.
let's break the
We're
barrier.
experiencing the same
Yeah,
things. I think there are multiple topics where
yeah,
actually, if we sat around as a group and went, right, let's just agree, take away all the barriers and obstacles, we could just get all of this stuff sorted. And I just wanted to come back to the point that you made. I've worked with a company. I
yeah,
won't name them, but this is my full-time job. But I work with a company where, can you believe, in a company of over 5,000 people, 30% didn't want to identify as either male or female. They didn't actually want to say. And so I think this is it is so important that we say the doors are open for everybody. Please come in. Even if you are so far past on the menopause, I'm not bothered, because just talking about it and seeing your reaction is exactly why I knew that this would be an important conversation. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, so come
Yeah,
back
yeah.
to that.
So okay. Anyway, going back to the definition, I think also if you look up the definition online, the first thing that says when you type in queer, it's like strange, odd, and second is like if your sexual identity doesn't align with heteronormative sexuality or gender, and like already tells you that okay, maybe yeah. What does that mean? So apart from being an umbrella term, so it's not just one thing, it's not a specific definition, but what we are kind of like, what society is built for is like, apart from white, but I don't think that, but heteronormative, and then so cisgender heterosexual people, that's the norm in society, okay, where cisgender means not transgender, that so means that their sex assigned as birth is in line um with their gender identity.
Yeah.
So which is like, for example, me, like I was born with like sexual female organs and I identify as a woman, so I'm cisgender. So anyone that does not align with that is not cisgender, so it's transgender. So trans is the opposite of cis, and
Yes.
everything in between. So there are also people, as you said, that do not feel comfortable in staying in the binary of like male female, so they're non-binary, so they are also under the umbrella term of transgender. So everyone in that spectrum that is not like cisgender like I am is potentially considered queer or under the LGBTQAI plus spectrum. Then, so that's for the gender identity. And then there is the sexual orientation, which is the norm is being heterosexual. So I'm a woman, I need to marry and reproduce with a man. That's like the kind of like stereotypical sexual orientation. Of course, that we know there are so many other people that don't have the same sexual or romantic attraction. So we have people attracted to the same sex. We have people that are attracted to different sexualities. For example, I identify as pansexual. So my sexual orientation and sexual attraction is not defined by a gender. So I'm attracted to different people. And this makes me non-heteronormative. And so I am queer. I am part of the LGBTQIA plus. A gay person, like anyone who is not attracted only specifically to the gender opposite to theirs, like we have in the norm, could be identify themselves or is part of the LGBTQIA plus community. So queer, some people part of the community also sometimes feel like, oh, I don't feel queer. So it depends. It's more like feeling other than the actual definition of the norm, where we like that is the norm that has been created by society that we need to fit in. So anyone that is outside there can identify as queer, and it's probably part of the LGBTQI plus community. And I know a lot of people, even my friends in Italy, they're like, what does that mean? And then so if you are like, it's something that if you are not part of the community and you are like in your heteronormative and like what is the other two things? Now I'm like cis and hetero. Okay, if you're not part of it, you don't even care about the rest. Like if you don't have menopause, you don't really even care about the menopause. But people should realize that they also live in the world with other people that are actually different from them. So to be able to be good people and actually like have relationship with people in society or like at home or like when they meet someone, they also need to be aware of what's outside their kind of bubble. So it's the same thing,
Definitely.
you know? So
Definitely. And what I would say is we know from our evidence that same-sex couples going through the menopause have the highest rates of separation. Because you can
okay, I didn't know
imagine,
that.
yeah, two people going through perimenopause when the symptoms, most of the symptoms can be psychological. There are more than 70 symptoms of perimenopause. They
Wow.
can affect us psychologically, physically, societally. In some cultures, you are seen as barren. You're seen as, past it. You're not revered anymore. The reality is there's this veil, and what we need to understand is when we talk to people who are in same-sex relationships, it'd be very, very hard, because you can imagine two people coming together where you've got all of that going on. It's like the
It's a lot.
perfect storm. And if that's two people who don't really understand what menopause is, that's why the highest rates of divorce correlate with menopause turning up, which is 51. So the highest rates of divorce and separation are 51. Sadly, suicide peaks in those with female biology around the age of 51. It's either
Wow.
coincidence or
Oh,
consequence.
coincidence.
It's a hell of a coincidence if it is.
No, that is mad. I had no idea. But it makes so much sense. And also, like, I am in a queer relationship, not that I want to disclose too much of it, but sometimes when I talk to my therapist about conflict and stuff, she goes like, have you communicated what part of the cycle are you in? Like, what that you're going through hormones changes? Like, is it clear that, like, and I'm like, shit, no, I never think that
No.
that has a part to play, but actually it's so important.
It's massive. And when we talk about the sort of four phases of women, I'm not an expert on this, but I love books that do talk about it. There's a lovely book called The Second Spring by Kate Codrington. You might want to look that one up, and it's beautifully written about how the moons, the seasons, how we track ourselves monthly through our cycle. But what we do know is, in the first 2 weeks, we're under the influence of estrogen. Remember that go-getting hormone, and the bit that can make us a bit anxious. And then midway through the cycle, in comes Cinderella in the form of progesterone, and she's like, Maybe you don't want to cane it so hard with the partying in the second 2 weeks. Maybe we just stay at home and eat some nice soulful food. Maybe we'll just ditch the exercise in the last 2 weeks. So we have this natural ebb and flow of those four types of women that we can be. But what tends to happen as we go through the perimenopause, it's a bit like, who's the crone that's moved into my life, because she doesn't want to have any fun anymore. She doesn't want to take any risks. I didn't even want to drive, Chloe. I stopped
Wow.
driving because I lost my confidence. And one of my most read posts on LinkedIn actually is about when I came back out of lockdown and started traveling again. It took all my courage to get on a train to go to London Docklands. But I did it because I wanted to prove to myself. So I'm a high performing individual, but honestly, this is how it really affected me. And you've seen it, part of that today. I forgot to send you the Zoom invite. So what starts to happen is little errors start to have big impacts on our
Mm.
confidence, how we show up. So actually, do you know what? Better just stay small because you tend to make a lot of mistakes now. So then we withdraw. This is what can happen if we don't have the right supports, the right information, and the right, you know, idea about how to look after ourselves. So for me, I feel really passionate. I feel sorry for that version of myself because I went through it for 16 years, and that's a
Mm.
long time. That's like a relationship with someone who moved in that I didn't really invite to stay for that long. And I wish I knew what I know now, which is forewarned is forearmed. And not that it's a battle, but actually it's like, do you know, if I'm going to meet this and come out the way I want to come out, I need to be prepared. So I knew that this wouldn't just be a one and done conversation with
I was
you.
about to say, whoa, so much to talk about. And also, yeah, if I was a company, I would totally hire you to talk to my employees. And if I was a person that can share your message, I will totally do it. It's so important. So crazy. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I know, and you are so welcome. But I would like to also say that the things that you are so positive about, which I don't think you actually fully appreciate, women going through perimenopause want what you're already offering, Chloe. You're offering that, be true to who you are. So I don't think you actually fully realize that you already have the solutions in your hand. Yeah, a bit of knowledge would be super helpful to you and you're willing to learn that. But I think you have the capacity. You're already giving women the solution. You didn't know. I always remember the Trini the take on Love Actually, which I still think is one of the best. And I knew you choreographed that brilliantly. But I think you bring back the fun to thing. And largely, as we go through
Yeah.
perimenopause, fun can leave us, that zest for life, that joy for life. And so I think you are already encouraging us to do that. You tell very authentic stories, you build and engage communities in ways that I don't think many people do. And I just feel a few of us getting together, and I can introduce you to some other people who would be really powerful. I think we could get the job done to actually go to people, look, there's a little bit more work that you need to do, a little bit more understanding. And if you do it, you'll be able to share that with someone else in your community. And the
Let's
thought
do
of
it.
people missing out, I can't bear that. So
Yeah.
so engaging with people like you has been amazing. So is there anything else why don't you tell us? What's the most profound thing you've taken from today?
Ooh. Well, as you've seen, I've been taking notes throughout because I'm like, ooh, okay. Because you know what, like as you said, and thank you so much for all the positive reflection on my work so far as well, because it's always, I don't know, of course, beautiful to hear that reflected back and understanding that what you offer and what you can do is even more than what you can think sometimes. So
Mm,
that's really empowering. So thank you so much. And actually made me think that when I have, because now I'm like a consultant with brands and for video, but also in general community. And then the most thing that they ask that they I bring in and that they say, yeah, that's exactly what we're missing is, as you said, the joy. Like, because when I introduce myself, I'm like, in the content, in everything I do, I'm so enthusiastic. I bring joy and then fun. And then they're like, yeah, this is exactly what we're missing. And I'm like, cool, like, Basically it's my embodiment. So maybe I actually bring more, like it's quite valuable that I have this kind of like zest for life in a way, and I'm
Yeah,
passionate about things.
yeah.
Um, so thank you. But I wanted to acknowledge that because thank you very much.
Oh, my
It's really
pleasure.
cool. What is the most kind of like thing that I'm taking? So let me see my notes. My notes were about um yeah, the sex hormones and the stress hormones. That again, I don't want to go too personal, but like that is huge. Like that is huge. So if you are in any kind of relationship, but you're struggling with like sexuality, feeling desired, and like don't understanding what's not working, so work on your stress first, and then see how it works. Because I also personally like when I'm stressed. I mean, this is a whole thing. I don't even want to tap into that. But that probably is the key of some of things that I'm going through right now. I'm not saying
Well, do you know what? When we go offline shortly, we'll talk about. But do you know that in itself is massive because women, our sexual and our desire and appetite for intimacy starts from here down.
yeah,
For those with male biology, it's the other way. And for
mm,
us, intimacy starts earlier in the day. You know, it starts at some point when we wake up and how we
yeah,
feel about ourselves. Now, if that happens to be on a day when your hormones are good, tick, tick, tick. But if it
yeah,
happens to be in a moment that follows a stressful period, it puts a lot of pressure on people, especially if you have long distance relationships or you work shift patterns. You know, the chances of you coming beautifully into alignment are slim to nothing. And so,
yeah,
therefore, what defines a lot of relationships in our youth, which is like that proximity to people, I'm close to people because I'm physically
yeah.
close, we have a lot in common. It can cause so many issues. So I'm delighted that you've noticed that, and that's like you've earmarked that for like, okay, think about that a bit more.
Yeah, that's like a big one that I'm gonna have to think about because it's so true. And actually, the other thing is like whatever relationship you're in, no matter what, like gender or sexuality or whatever, being aware of your hormones is like so important for your life, for your health, for avoid to be overwhelm yourself, avoid to be overwhelming to the other person, and to be able to communicate and kind of like find the right balance. Like I don't think that yeah, I've never heard of couples that kind of like in their weekly check-ins talk about hormone levels and how they can be taken into consideration into conflict resolution, into planning, into like social life building. Like it's so important. And I know hormones are important, but I am just gradually, I think it's just the last year that I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Hormones are not just for me when I have my period and when I don't have my period. It's like so much that is like impact the whole life. It's like so it happens to it happens. It's like we all have the hormones, like it's part of our biology for everyone. So making them so relevant in conversations and getting more people access to these conversations, even if they are minorities, and by system they have been pushed away to the main care and the main like attention. Like it's a no-brainer. It's such a big mission.
Exactly. And one thing I wanted to come back to, you very nicely reminded me there, and I do actually acknowledge that, you know, there are pockets of the medical professional sort of system that just don't know enough.
Yeah,
And, you know, it's not acceptable. And I agree. And I'm already thinking about how could, like, perhaps you and I collaborate to actually improve that conversation with people, you know, because there will be a fear from them, don't know where to
mm,
start, make a complete
mm,
hash of it, possibly, and leave the other person feeling like that was the worst thing that I ever did. I wouldn't be advising anyone else to do that. We've got to sort of change that narrative. But apps can be really helpful, Chloe. Period
mm-hmm.
tracking apps can be
Yeah,
amazing. So many of these also have AI built in behind them, which means it will say to you, noticing that your menstrual cycle's getting longer or it's getting shorter, you seem to be struggling with heavy bleeding. This would be a good time to have a conversation about perimenopause with someone. So I
yeah,
think what we can also do is encourage people to have that curiosity,
Yeah.
and to look at it like that. But you're absolutely right. No two menstrual cycles correlate together. If only it was that good, like we all get our hormones by DHL or any other courier provider, like instantly at the time that we need it. It doesn't work like that. And so therefore, that's a newsflash for everyone. What we know with male biology, their testosterone arrives pretty much the same time every day. If you have female biology, it could be on your standard postal service, and we know how that works.
Yeah, but Amantha, what if you are non-binary and you have a non-binary intersex biology? What if you have one biology, but you're on HRT and then you have heavy amount of testosterone or estrogen on top of you?
Yes.
Where are you at? Like,
Well,
that's a
this is it. This is
conversation.
it. Yeah, you don't know, and if you are trying to, conceal the fact that you're menstruating, but you're heavy bleeding because you're in perimenopause, and if we have to stop our medication, I mean, adding COVID, we didn't even talk about COVID today. COVID is
Oh,
causing massive ripples in people's fertility. I think we've yet to see the big data on that, but you're absolutely right. People who are on cocktails of drugs, like I say, steroids, hormone
yeah,
replacement therapy, blockers. Like, did you know
yeah.
that people who
Puberty
are,
blockers.
yes, puberty blockers, cancer therapy, people who have cancer go in and out of chemical menopause,
Mm.
fertility treatment, if they stop your ovaries, that sort of stuff. You're going in and out of chemical menopause. So, really and truly, either directly or indirectly, this is a conversation for 100% of people on the planet,
Yes.
including your lovely mum. So, wouldn't it be wonderful that you can now go back with some clarity to let her know that menopause was actually one day, mum? So, that's it. Everything else was perimenopause, and now you're postmenopause, mum. So that in itself is an eye opener. So I know you'll go away and tell loads of people, and I hope that we have another conversation sometime soon to sort of expand this up. But for now, tell us what's the most exciting thing that's coming up in your timeline this year. What are you looking forward to, either personally, professionally? Because you've gone to surprise your friend, which is why you're so gorgeous that you still made time for me. You surprised a friend today who was speaking, which is absolutely lovely. What a great friend you are. What have you got coming up that you personally are looking forward to or excited about?
Yes, yeah. So, I talked about these conversations, the body talks that I was doing on Instagram Live over lockdown. Now I moved them into a podcast project. So I recorded already 6 episodes. I need to record a couple of other ones. I'm about to start the editing process, and then I'm gonna launch. And my first 6 guests are like, we will blow your mind. And one of them, already that we might have mentioned today.
Okay.
So anyway, so a lot of inspirational people that actually guided me through my own embodiment and understanding of my own body, or inspired me because they listening to their bodies created something which is maybe like something like a business or like art or choreography or something else. So I kind of like took everything we've been talking about, what I stand for and what I worked on, next level, to hear from people that actually then are like have a large platforms and have been able to create something truly big about it. And then after these first 6 guests, I'm gonna go back into people that have a smaller platform, and then what amazing and innovative things they're doing. So this is my The Body Talks project, and it's much more. But this year I'm gonna release that podcast, and for me, it's like a huge thing. So that's one thing I'm looking forward
Oh,
to.
lovely. That's
Yeah.
amazing. That's amazing. And you've obviously you've moved home, haven't you? And you've got a lovely home that you're nesting in and settling into, which is really, really lovely. Well, from me to you, it has been a real privilege to speak to you. Thank you for creating a space of safety as well, that I could explore some things that I wasn't sure of. But for now, Chloé Dall'Olio, it's so gorgeous to have had you on. Thank you so much for giving us your time today.
Thank you, Amantha, for inviting me and making me think about menopause in a different way. So
Oh,
fantastic.
brilliant.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
thank you